What's up guys, Joe Munoz, OneStepPrep.com. In this video you see behind me the flight pattern. I just flew this trip, okay? For any of you that know about flying in Florida or really anywhere in the southeast or in the eastern seaboard, in the summertime you're looking at a bunch of storms. And so on this particular flight I was going Lauderdale to Raleigh, Durham, and man, we ended up holding for an hour. We had two different holding fixes. The airport was closed and it reopened, then we were getting vectors and it closed again. We had windshear alerts, runway specific. We had diversions that we were potentially looking at, getting weather for different airports. We were working for our money on this day, I can tell you that. And so I want to take you through the entire thought processes that we were going through as this all played out. So here we are arriving from the south. And scroll this up just a little bit. Unfortunately, the weather's not depicted on this chart, courtesy flightaware.com, by the way, appreciate that. So we were coming here, arriving from the south northbound, and as we were descending on the arrival into Raleigh, we pulled the ATIS and we start to see, hey, there's thunderstorms, there's rain, there's heavy precipitation, there's wind shear advisories, etc. And then what happens is we get a notification from the approach control that effectively the airport is going to go into holding because they're going to shut down, right? And so what happened was, as we're coming inbound here, right about this point, we get issued holding instructions, and they said actually hold as published over blogs, which is a waypoint right here. Well, I happened to actually put the hold in immediately, and I was ready to go ahead and insert the hold in an A320, insert or execute for you Boeing people out there. And they said, actually, you know, we realize you're close to the hold, so they said, we're going to give you delay vector so you can set it up properly and come back. So they gave us a heading of 090. I honestly could have just inserted it because I had the hold programmed already, but I didn't yet have an opportunity for the other pilot that I was flying with to confirm and everything. So I said, okay, let's take the delay heading and we'll do this properly, do it calmly. We took a heading of 090 and then right turn, proceed direct blogs, hold as published. We come in here and we start holding. Now, as we start holding, a couple things come to mind. The first thing I want to share with you is hold speed. Hold speed comes to mind. In an A320, those of you may or may not know this, typically in a 320, we like to hold at green dot plus 20. So also we need to look at whether that's legal or not given the altitude at which we were holding. Now we happen to be holding here at 13,000 feet. So we were fine. We had plenty in terms of speed to do green dot plus 20. So the first thing was hold speed. Second thing, entering the holding pattern. We reported position time altitude when we're entering the hold, just a standard ATC call. Hey, we are over blogs entering at time 1800 local and altitude of 13,000 feet. Now we're in the holding pattern. The issue that we're having now in the holding pattern as we're doing this, I'm going to share with you, is our workload is getting a little busy for several reasons. One, we're making a PA announcement to the passengers as to why we're doing loops in the sky and what the projection is in terms of giving them an update to make our way into the airport. First thing. Second thing, we start looking at the alternate, which we had on our flight plan, which was Richmond. Start pulling weather for Richmond and surrounding airports, and we figured out that Richmond probably is not going to be a suitable alternate at this point because it looks like some of the weather is affecting that area as well, and a better alternate is going to be Myrtle Beach. So I start typing up to dispatch, hey, I think we're going to need to change the alternate to Myrtle Beach, which, oh, by the way, is actually slightly closer as well to our current position, and it's 10 miles clear in a million visibility, so let's do that. So we coordinated that with dispatch. We got an alternate switched from Richmond to Myrtle, and that requires an amendment. So if you don't know what that means, I recommend hitting up our 121 Airline Operations course. Those of you new to the 121 world, if you have a flight plan and you are not going to operate that flight plan exactly as it is depicted on your flight or flight plan, you need to get an amendment. So now we have a alternate which was Richmond that's now becoming Myrtle Beach. Different alternate that's not on the operating flight plan, the original one. So we require an amendment. So we coordinate to get an amendment from dispatch. Now, meanwhile, we're holding in here. And as we're holding, the weather is starting to move our direction. So the holding pattern is not very desirable anymore because the south side of this hold, we're in clear sky. And the northerly part of the hold over here, we're getting bumped around pretty good as we go IMC into some of these clouds that are developing. So after a couple loops in the hold, we make a request to ATC to change our holding location, and we happen to hear on the frequency another carrier in another aircraft holding at a fix called Dental. So we hear as we're getting bumped around in here, oh, proceed direct to Dental, expect hold instructions. So we're like, okay, let's type that in real quick in the direct to feature just to see where that would take us. Where does dental happen to be, right? Well, dental happened to be just slightly south of our position over here. And it was in what we can tell to be pretty clear area. So we said, hey, that's a preferable area to hold. Let's start making our way that way. So we put in a request to ATC to hold over dental as the other aircraft was doing, and they approved it. And as we started making our way this way to enter this holding pattern over here, we actually never really made it to dental. Okay, this is not a hold over dental right here. This is a different hold I'm going to get to in a second. As we're making our way there, we get word from ATC that they're intending to switch the airport around. They were operating on a southwesterly operation, landing 2-3. Now they're switching to the 5s, okay? So as they say, hey, we're switching the airport around, actually your present position is gonna work better for vectoring once we finally open this up. Could you do a present position hold? Absolutely. Went to the MCDU, entered a present position hold immediately, boom. Now we're in a holding pattern right here. So now as we're in this holding pattern, and we did 3 loops in the holding pattern, we're calculating bingo fuel. When are we going to have to divert? We're looking at all options at this point. Myrtle, by the way, I will share with you because they gave us another option. They said you could do a present position hold here, or we could send you further out to the west and we can hold you over there for vectoring once we reopen. Well, Myrtle happens to be down this way. So this present position hold is closer to the alternate that we now have, so we preferred to just stay here. That was part of the decision-making process there as well. The other thing here is that as we're in the holding pattern, I'm starting to get curious. I wonder if anyone's making approaches. They did finally later on open the airport. So I'm curious, as we're making our turns in the hold, is anybody getting in? So on radio number 2, I dial up the tower frequency. Now I'm listening to the tower and I'm just getting a feel for what's the operation look like down there. There's 2 airplanes on the approach. One had actually just made a mist. I hear another airplane going in on the approach. They switch to tower, and then I later on hear that they end up doing a go around and they're getting vectored basically to come back and try it again. So now there's 2 aircraft on the approach, both of which went around, and they went around for erratic airspeed indication. So now, as we're in the holding pattern, we get a wind shear alert. And the wind shear alert was runway specific, and this was not actually the first time. When we were back here in this other holding pattern, we also had a wind shear alert here. And obviously we were holding, and after the wind shear alert, they closed the airport down. And then we made our way over here and we got another wind shear alert. Okay, now the wind shear alert, if you don't know, basically at the carrier where I fly at least, you cannot shoot an approach to a runway that has a runway specific wind shear alert active. Okay, that may vary by company policy. Where I fly, we can't do the approach. So we're basically stuck in this holding pattern until this wind shear alert goes away, or we use a different runway. But unfortunately, the other runway that was there is relatively short and has some construction ongoing, so it's not a preferred runway. So here we are holding. And we're starting to look and we're like, okay, well, we're going to be able to make a few more turns here and then we're going to have to bingo out of here and go to our alternate, right? And we're like, how can we make some more fuel? How can we save fuel? Well, we can slow down. Okay, well, if we slow down, you know, we're not going to be green dot plus 20. Maybe we can hold with flaps 1. The problem is now we're starting to get into some IMC down here. And as we're holding an IMC, I'm like, yeah, you can slow down and put flaps 1. But now you got flaps extended in icing conditions because we were in IMC and the temperature was below 10 degrees. Now you got your flaps out in icing conditions. I don't think we want to hold with flaps extended in icing conditions. So that's probably not a good way for us to try to make, quote unquote, make fuel here. I think we're just going to be able to hang out a little bit longer, make whatever turns we can, and see if we can make our way into the airport before we get out of here, or maybe change our hold to a different location. Fast forward now a little bit after making a few turns, making a few PA announcements, making a few contacts to dispatch to keep them in the loop of what's going on. And this is what happens, folks, for those of you that are not familiar with the world of the airlines, okay? You have to keep everybody in the loop, starting with the cockpit, yourself, your crew, okay, you and your captain or your FO, and then now branching back into the cabin, your flight attendants, what's going on, what can they expect, when can they get ready to prepare the cabin for arrival and landing, is it going to get any worse than what it currently is, etc. Then the passengers, you got to be in touch with ATC, you got to be in touch with dispatch, right? So there's many moving pieces, and this is what I would recommend our 121 Airline Operations course for if you're not familiar with these moving pieces, the who and the what, and what exactly is going on. So as we're here making our turns, the airport reopens. Excellent news. And we make the executive decision that we're going to try this approach once. And if we can't get in on this one attempt, we're basically pretty close to the bingo fuel, so we'll just make our way to the alternate, which is clear in a million. Finally, we made our way in. successful landing with nothing more than a little bit of light rain on the approach. And so I'm just sharing all this with you so that you can basically kind of piece together and put together what are the thought processes that come together when you are approaching an airport, weather's deteriorating, there's wind shear, and all these things. The other thing I'm going to share with you is, as I'm over here briefing this approach, one of the things I'm briefing is wind shear, the threats. Okay, we start all of our briefings with threats. Hey, what are the threats? Well, right now it's late, and it was late. Okay, we have been up flying. It was already 10:30 p.m. We're going around making circles at nighttime with weather all around, right? And now we're about to make this approach into the airport where there was wind shear. It's since moved out. But the reality of it is, hey, what is the wind shear recovery? If we get wind shear on the approach, what am I going to do? I'm talking about an A320. I'm going to announce wind shear toga. We're going to keep the autopilot on. We're not going to change the configuration. We're going to allow the autopilot to fight the shear. If for some reason the autopilot kicks off, initial pitch attitude 17.5 degrees, then it's necessary to fight the shear. And I'm basically verbalizing what the recovery is going to be so we can be prepared for this. I'm down, I'm shooting the approach, I'm coming down the approach corridor. The whole time, mindset-wise, what I'm thinking is wind shear toga. If I see any erratic fluctuation, I hear the airplane saying wind shear, I see ground speed doing something funny, and you feel or suspect, uh-oh, this is wind shear, and the airplane says wind shear, I'm out of here. And I am in a mindset of, it's time to go. And I'm in that mindset because prior to that, when we were over here holding, we had 2 aircraft that we were hearing on the tower frequency that made the go around, right? So something's going on. Fortunately, as I mentioned, it dissipated, and we were now coming behind number 3, these other 2 airplanes, to shoot the approach, both of which prior to us got in successfully. So long story short, we made it in successfully. But I just want to share with you, these are the things that go into this in terms of thought processes and what you could do. Consider all your alternates. Don't forget about talking to your passengers, your crew, dispatcher. Don't forget about calculating bingo fuel, getting your amendment from the dispatcher. I wanted to tell you that too, right? Getting that amendment, calculating the bingo fuel, re-briefing or reviewing mentally the wind shear escape maneuver for when you do go and conduct this approach, staying hyper vigilant of airspeed indication, ground speed indications, and how the airplane is reacting. Maybe tuning up tower frequency as you're in a holding pattern to get a feel for what's happening down there. Maybe finding other potential fixes where others are holding and coordinating, hey, when they reopen this, whether they turn the airport around or not, where would be a great position for me to A, be able to get in a more expeditious fashion, but also B, where's a good holding point that would allow me to be closer to my alternate so I can make a beeline for the alternate as soon as possible and maybe save a little fuel there. So these are some of the things that I would very highly recommend you consider if you ever have to deal with something similar to this, okay? So, hope you found value in the video. Joe Munoz, Juan Dominguez, your friends in training program success. Leave your comments below. Would love to hear from you. Like, share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We would absolutely love for you to do that, and more than ever, we'd love for you to enroll with us in our online program or come visit us here in Miami. We'll see you then.